Congress has averted a potential financial crisis for now. Last night, the House approved a measure to extend the government's ability to avoid a default. It raises the debt ceiling by $480 billion, just enough to make it to December. No Republicans voted to raise the limit, which President Biden will sign in the coming days. Here's how House Speaker Nancy Pelosi laid out the stakes.
The failure to lift the debt limit could result in the loss of up to 6 million jobs, the elimination of $15 trillion in household wealth, and drastic increase in the cost of loans, car loans, mortgages, student loans, credit card bills, and other borrowing.
Plus, the Labor Department says inflation rose again in September. The Consumer Price Index is now 5.4% higher compared to last year. That's up slightly from 5.3% last month. The White House insists it's only temporary.
We certainly understood and knew that when we were coming in, when the president was coming into office, and he was coming in at a time where we needed to turn the economy back on, where he was coming in at a time where unemployment was high, where wages were down, demand was down, which, as you know, you have once you build up, when demand increases, that can result in an increase in prices, that over time, as the economy was turning back on, we'd see some of these transitory effects. That's what's been predicted. That's what we have been planning for. And of course, next year, we expect it to come down as outside forecasters are projecting.
Earlier, the White House hosted the heads of major U.S. ports and corporations. They're working to address supply chain bottlenecks leading to product shortages and rising prices. President Biden announced a deal he called a potential game changer.
And today we have some good news. They're going to help speed up the delivery of goods all across America. After weeks of negotiation and working with my team and with the major union retailers and freight movers, the Port of Los Angeles announced today that it's going to begin operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Let's bring in Nikole Killion, Zeke Miller, and Sarah Westwood. Nikole is a CBS News congressional correspondent. Zeke is a CBS News political contributor and White House reporter for the Associated Press. And Sarah is a political and investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. Welcome. It's good to have you all. Zeke, let me start with you. You know, a lot of people might not realize it, but supply chains impact every American in some way, and especially as we come up on the holiday season. What's behind the pressures building, and what does the administration say they're doing to relieve that pressure?
You know, it's not just the higher prices that we've seen, whether it be at the pump or just everyday consumer goods that we saw the Social Security Administration today increasing the cost of living adjustment for retirees, the highest level we've seen in decades. It's not just that. It's also the availability of basic goods, the delays for manufacturing products, that are interrupting the economy at really every stage. What we saw from the administration today is an attempt to address a sort of one particular component of that, which is sort of backlog in shipping and offloading, particularly on the West Coast ports. That's not a new problem. That's been around. We've seen reports about concerns from manufacturers, from shippers, and retailers about this really all year. But this announcement today, the Port of Los Angeles, and following the announcement earlier of the Port of Long Beach, both two of the largest ports on the West Coast, moving to expedite offloading by increasing the hours. That's a welcome signal. Certainly it may help keep prices from going up, but it might not be enough. And the administration really hasn't got a lot of questions of why it took them this long to take this step and force these ports to go down this road. If this has been an issue that really has been responsible for so much of the price increases and lack of availability across the marketplace, for the better part of 6 months to a year.
Yeah, we'll see how quickly, things kind of resolve themselves. Nikole, meantime, Congress bought itself some time by passing the temporary debt ceiling extension, but it continues to loom over Washington until it expires in December. Now, Democrats say they won't raise the debt ceiling on their own, but their options are limited. Have they put forward any ideas?
Well, Democrats haven't completely ruled out and not putting it in that reconciliation package. And quite frankly, that is what Senate Republicans are calling on them to do. More specifically, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who has been saying for months now that that should be the path that Democrats take. Now, Leader Schumer has said that that could be something that would be very risky. And in the past, he had said that, Democrats didn't have enough time because it just involves a lot of procedural moves. But, now that they have this temporary extension and Leader McConnell has made clear that Republicans won't help them the next time around, this time around they may not have much of a choice. There are some other possible options under consideration. I mean, Speaker Pelosi just yesterday made clear that she still believes that raising or suspending the debt limit should be a bipartisan vote. But short of that, there is a legislative proposal floating out there that would give the Treasury more power over, dealing with the debt limit going forward, and that is something that the Speaker said has merit.
Well, Sarah, record numbers of Americans are quitting their jobs, just as Americans, as Zeke mentioned, are paying more at the gas pump and at grocery stores. Is this complicating the White House's push for their infrastructure and social spending packages?
I think absolutely this could hurt the Biden administration's efforts to get those pieces of legislation over the finish line, because while a lot of the supply chain problems that we're seeing, which is a big factor in causing the prices to rise, aren't necessarily the fault of the Biden administration and have a lot more to do with conditions created by the pandemic, voters could still hold the White House and the democratically controlled Congress accountable for what they're seeing in the economy right now. And it also creates potentially a question of the administration's credibility, given that economists have been warning about the fact that we would see these bottlenecks, that we would see this spike in prices for months. And the White House has been downplaying that possibility, trying to say that Americans aren't feeling the impact of that increase in prices, even though they really are. And it creates an opening for Republicans to come in and say, look, Democrats are trying to tell you that we need this massive spending package to help grease the wheels of the economy. But look at everything they've been saying about the economy for months so far. It hasn't panned out. They've been saying that these price increases will be transitory so far. They're continuing to say that, but that hasn't panned out. Obviously, we're still talking about shortages that are going to run into the holiday season and beyond. So that creates a real opening for the GOP to go after Democrats' credibility on the economy. And that's really difficult when you already have moderates that are on the fence about supporting a piece of legislation of that size. This could really put pressure on those vulnerable Democrats who are already a little squeamish about it.
Yeah, and Zeke, with that as our sort of national political backdrop, in an interview with the AP, Virginia gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe called out Democrats and the White House for failing to pass infrastructure legislation. He said they need to, quote, get their act together. How's the White House defending this?
The White House is certainly cognizant of that message, and they kind of agree. They want to get this done. They recognize the political realities facing the president. His poll numbers are down, but also facing his party heading into what is already going to be a very tough midterm election season next year. And they have this bellwether gubernatorial race in Virginia now that is much closer than anyone really would have expected for a state that had been trending solidly blue over the last several cycles, with Terry McAuliffe trying to retake the governor's mansion there. That said, that tactic of running against Washington, tends to work, for leaders. I mean, Terry McAuliffe, though, is itself, though, the kind of a consummate Washington insider. He's the former chair of the Democratic National Committee. He's been around. He knows how this is done. That said, the tactic of pointing a finger at Washington, saying, do a better job, that tends to work for candidates. And we'll see if it pans out for Governor McAuliffe, but it does create some tension between the president and some of his vulnerable candidates.
Yeah, it is an interesting approach because, as you say, I mean, talk about the consummate Washington insider. I mean, Terry McAuliffe is a well-known figure in national political circles, certainly. So it's interesting to see that kind of rhetoric aimed at Washington, a place he knows well and is known very well, a very prominent figure. All right, well, Nikole, will Democrats meet the self-imposed October 31st deadline to pass infrastructure and the larger social and climate package?
Well, I'd put it at a 50-50 shot at this point. I mean, look, I asked Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who chairs the Congressional Progressive Caucus, about that very thing yesterday, if she thinks that October deadline is going to slide simply because, there hasn't been a lot of movement around some of these negotiations. And, she said that or suggested that it is possible. Keep in mind that late last month, that bipartisan infrastructure bill was supposed to be voted on the House and got held up because there was no agreement in hand on this broader social spending package. And that's pretty much where we find ourselves now. We're in the middle of the month. Of course, now they have about 2 weeks left. At last check, Congresswoman Jayapal said that, progressives are waiting on this counter offer from Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, since they're the ones kind of proposing this lower price tag. But when I reached out to their offices today, Senator Manchin's office wouldn't comment. Senator Sinema's office says that conversations are continuing and pointed me back to a statement that the senator and her office put out just a couple of weeks ago, where it says that she has already detailed her concerns and priorities to the White House and to Leader Schumer, and that, she's not going to negotiate through the press, that she has kind of made some of her priorities and concerns clear. So, again, that's kind of where we find ourselves in this moment. That being said, Congresswoman Jayapal did make the point that, in the case of that infrastructure package, because there were some other provisions tied to surface transportation that expired, that had to be extended, she believes that that surface transportation part of the infrastructure bill could be temporarily re-upped again, if need be, if they're not to that point of having an agreement on hand on the broader reconciliation package. So in other words, it sounds like perhaps they may have to push this off past October, but, really all sides continue to say that they want to try to get to some point of agreement. Speaker Pelosi has made clear that time is of essence, as has Leader Schumer. So again, I'm sure this is one of those things that could come down to, the final day, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, Nikole Killion, we certainly appreciate your tenacity in trying to get some clarity with respect to that picture, considering it sounds very much to me like a bit of Groundhog Day, trying to get some answers pinned down there. All right, well, Sarah, let me turn to you. I want to ask about vaccine mandates. Southwest Airlines pilots have filed a lawsuit to block the enforcement of the federal vaccine mandate. The union wants disability insurance to cover pilots who may fail routine exams from vaccination side effects. Here's Dr. Anthony Fauci responding to a question about this earlier. Let's listen.
What the airlines are talking about not having a person fly for, I believe, 24 to 48 hours after, because we do know that it is not uncommon to get a sore arm or to maybe get a low-grade fever or some aches that almost invariably diminish and dissipate over a period of a couple of days. The long-term effects that the people are apparently concerned about really have I'm sure there is a very, 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 very rare exception, but the long-term effects are really essentially non-existent.
Now, you report vaccine mandates and staffing shortages are becoming a bigger issue. In what areas, Sarah, and what's been the ripple effect in certain industries?
Well, one area that's really bracing for a pinch from the vaccine mandates is law enforcement. Some of these vaccine mandates have been rolled out at the city level, so that affects fire and EMS. It affects police departments in particular. And some departments are struggling with encouraging enough of their officers to get vaccinated, which is an issue because police were already facing a staffing shortage before this. For a variety of reasons, departments were having trouble filling their academies. They're suffering from a record number of departures over the past year, given the political climate surrounding law enforcement. And a lot of officers are requesting religious exemptions, which has sort of opened up this very sensitive front on the battle over vaccine mandates. In the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, for example, roughly 2,600 employees of the LAPD said that they plan to request religious exemptions to the vaccine mandate there, which forces that city into some really thorny questions about how they're going to verify whether beliefs are sincerely held, whether they are going to allow those sort of carve-outs for religious religious beliefs. And those are the sort of dilemmas that all organizations are going to have to face as they grapple with this sort of balance between privacy and personal choice, but also the really compelling public health interest for getting people vaccinated. The challenges that you're seeing with police departments, with companies like Southwest and other states, cities, corporations that have gone ahead and enforced their own vaccine mandates ahead of the Biden administration, is that there are going to be a lot of enforcement challenges when the Labor Department finally rolls out Biden's federal vaccine mandate for workplaces with 100 employees or more. That challenges are verifying whether people requesting exemptions are doing so legitimately, how they are going to potentially pay for and implement a testing regimen for employees who do ultimately opt out of the vaccine requirement. And so all of that are a lot of unanswered questions that the Biden administration hasn't really addressed ahead of the rollout, but you're seeing some struggles in industries from travel to law enforcement to healthcare workers so far. That's really, I think, foreshadows a lot of the nationwide challenges that we will see when that rule does roll out.
And very quickly, before we let you go, Sarah, can you just talk a bit more about the healthcare industry in particular? Because it is interesting to see when you talk about ripple effects, how it is that the challenges faced by hospitals across this country in trying to deal with not just COVID patients, but also people who are looking for other healthcare that are not necessarily seeking treatment for COVID, that they are affected too because of these staffing shortages.
Yeah, this is a particularly sensitive issue when it comes to vaccine mandates because healthcare workers are on the front lines, are at an increased risk in a lot of contexts of exposure to COVID. And we had already been seeing a healthcare worker shortage because of the pandemic-related burnout, because of the additional strain on hospitals and medical systems. And so there have been questions about whether it's wise in that context, against that backdrop of staffing shortages, to risk losing talent to people who are refusing the vaccine. I covered this for the Examiner, and we talked about one hospital system in upstate New York that had to start denying ICU transfers, that had to start denying inpatient elective surgeries because they just didn't have enough staff because they were losing a percentage of their workers to vaccine resistance. And so this is an issue that we're likely to see across the board. When it comes to healthcare workers, obviously there is a public health interest in getting workers in that industry vaccinated. But when you do have staffing shortages in such a crucial industry, and this is true across the board, but especially true in the context of healthcare, it does raise a lot of questions about the cost-benefit analysis of vaccine mandates and how organizations are going to make those.
All right, one more. Nikole, let me ask you, Politico reports that Jeffrey Rosen, the former acting attorney general in the Trump administration, will testify before the January 6th committee. What is the latest on who is and is not complying with subpoenas?
Yeah, well, the committee hasn't acknowledged that as of yet, but committee members have told me that they have been speaking to people, both in and outside of government. That being said, we do know just a short time ago that the Select Committee did issue a subpoena for another former Justice Department official, Jeffrey Clark. And he basically was a Trump loyalist. At one point in time, actually, the former president was considering ousting then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen in favor of Mr. Clark to pursue fraudulent election claims. And so that is why the committee is now issuing this subpoena for him now, because they believe that he was involved in efforts to try to overturn the election and also trying to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power. Chairman Benny Thompson saying in a statement, we need to understand Mr. Clark's role in these efforts of the Justice Department and learn who was involved across the administration. So that is the latest action from the committee at this point. Keep in mind that they also subpoenaed a number of other officials who helped organize the rally on January 6th and organize some events leading up to January 6th. Some of those requests are due back today from those various individuals, including the organizer of that January 6th rally. And then on top of that, you have this week, of course, a series of depositions for several former Trump officials, from Steve Bannon, the former president's chief strategist, to Mark Meadows, his former chief of staff. As we saw last week, Mr. Bannon's attorney indicated that he is unlikely to comply with the the committee's request. So at this point in time, many committee members saying they don't know if these officials will show up later this week. Again, those depositions slated to take place Thursday and Friday. Elaine?
All right, much more to come on that story. Nikole Killion, Zeke Miller, and Sarah Westwood, great to have you all. Thank you very much.